So why does marketing work? You see billboards and commercials and all sorts of stuff. Radio blips, audio, drawings, person-to-person discussions of things that we like. And sometimes it's interesting on the TV commercial, see a bunch of people having fun. And they're just having fun, and they're playing volleyball, and they're running around, they're having fun, and they're going from place to place, and they're having fun, and they're doing this other stuff, and they're having fun. And the key thing that you really realize is they're definitely having fun. And you're like, well, why are they having fun? By the end of it, you find out they're having fun because they're drinking a beer, or because they're drinking a carbonated beverage of some sort, or because they're going to Sonic Drive-In, or whatever. Like, the only thing that the message is, though, is you can have fun. If what? Well, if you buy our product, if you do our thing, if you get the latest pogo stick, right? Like whatever it might be, this is the way to have fun. Marketing plays on our motivations. Marketing ties into real desires we have for fun, enjoyment, confidence, steadiness in life. Insurance ads don't generally promote you're going to have fun. They generally promote you're going to feel more safe and secure in life, right? Other ads sometimes use the power of like, well, you're missing out now because you didn't buy the latest $50,000 phone. You don't have the coolest gadget, so therefore you're not the coolest. Your identity is not good enough. Or maybe you just don't use the right deodorant. That's why you don't have the boyfriend or girlfriend, because you don't have the right deodorant or perfume. If only you had Axe deodorant, well, then, they'd be all over you. Marketing works because it ties into real needs and real desires. It's not actually a terrible thing to feel secure. It's not actually a terrible thing to have fun and enjoyment. God made a world that's really fun. Eat any food and you'll see he didn't make just slop. Go look at a tree and you'll see he didn't just make a black and white, or look at black and white photos and you'll still see it's really beautiful. Like, the world's so beautiful, even if it's only in black and white, it still looks beautiful. God gave us senses. He gave us a world that is sensory and enjoyable in so many ways. So it's interesting to see when we're looking at Revelation, in Revelation 14, the ways that God motivates and urges toward endurance. Look at chapter 13 that Justin preached through last week and did just a commendable job of talking through these beasts and these symbols of the plan of evil throughout the ages until Jesus returns. And we get to the end of chapter 13, and we've seen statements like, the beast is giving breath to the image of the beast, or the prophet is, and the image of the beast can speak and force people to worship him, and you're going to have this mark before you can even buy or sell, all this kind of stuff. After that, like, you can't buy or sell without following the beast. You're going to be killed if you don't worship the beast, whatever. What's the next reaction we would expect? Like, that's intimidating. That's no fun. This is a downer. But then John looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb. Yet another instance in Revelation where what you might expect to see from the natural flow of what's being said is now opposite of what you'd expect to see. And it should be fairly jarring by contrast. As we look at chapter 14, and it leads in and basically continues this discussion of the beast and then the Lamb and his people and then what all becomes of this. But we're put face to face with the question of, how are we going to see the world and how are we going to be motivated within it? In chapter 13, all those who follow the beast. In chapter 14, we're met right off the bat with the Lamb and his followers. And throughout this chapter, it's going to speak to that. So as we look at the first few chapters, what we see first, I believe, is that the Lamb sustains his worshiping disciples. The Lamb Jesus, sustains his worshiping disciples. I looked and behold on Mount Zion. So right there already we need to stop for a second because the scene change took us from on the earth where the beast was. Chapter 13, verse 1, I saw a beast rising out of the sea. Chapter 11, I saw another beast rising out of the earth. So we've gone from the earth where the beast is reigning, the earth where chapter 12 told us the dragon went down to make war on God's people. So on the earth where the dragon is, where the beasts have arisen, where this unholy trinity of a sort is in existence bringing trials. But by contrast, on Mount Zion stands the Lamb. On Mount Zion being a name for Jerusalem, but at the same time also being, by connection, the name of eternal existence. We're looking to that hope, looking to the hope of Zion. Think of the people of Israel coming up to Jerusalem from various places at various festivals and stuff. They're looking up to Zion as they come. There's a great hope here. So on Zion, by contrast to the earth, Zion where our hope is, there stands the Lamb. And with him, 144,000, which we've seen before. You might recall from earlier in Revelation, if we go back to chapter 7, there's 4 angels holding back the 4 winds, and he says, don't harm the earth or anything until we've sealed the servants of God on their foreheads. Verse 3. Verse 4, I heard the number of those sealed, 144,000. We looked at this several months ago now because before the summer. But the 12,000 from this tribe, 12,000 from that tribe. 12 tribes are listed, 12 times 12 equals 144,000. But the tribes that are listed are not precisely equivalent with the actual tribes of Israel in ancient times. It helps to show us this is a symbolic representation of the people of God, especially then immediately after verse 9, it says, after this I looked and behold a great multitude. So he heard 144,000 were numbered, but he turned to see them, and it was an innumerable multitude of the people of God from all tribes and tongues and peoples and languages, worshiping, crying out to the Lamb. So here now, a few chapters later in chapter 14, we see the 144,000 again. They are with the Lamb, Mount Zion. Protected from the craziness that's happening on earth because they're with him. Are these ones who have already died? Are these ones who are symbolically represented as protected? Either way could be true because the next thing we read is the first attribute of the 144,000 in this portrait of saints, essentially. They have his name, the Lamb's, and his Father's written on their foreheads. Now, chapter 7, what was put on their foreheads? A seal. Chapter 14, we now have, because Revelation shows us various perspectives of the diamond all the time, we look back at the same thing and we see the seal was their name, like a beautiful, holy branding of a sort. Like, these people are mine. They're mine for eternity. They're mine, and here they are now on Zion with the Lamb. So in chapter 7 is 144,000. We're not going to hurt the earth until we've sealed them and claimed them. And in chapter 14, we already see some of this fulfillment that, yeah, they've made it to Zion. Here they are, standing on Zion with the Lamb, the ones who he's protected and sustained until this time, sealed with his name. And it's interesting because in chapter 13, those who were part of the beast's ways, they had a mark. In chapter 14 and chapter 7 previously, it's a seal. I do think there's a difference in those two words that is meaningful, like a seal of protection, a seal of ownership versus just a mark that you meet the minimum requirement or whatever. You've been noted as being part of this club. But it's very different from saying, I have sealed you and you are mine. When Jesus talks about the Holy Spirit being with us, or later in the New Testament that the Spirit is with us as a down payment of our inheritance. Believers in Jesus are sealed. And that has present and eternal meaning for our endurance. As we continue the picture of these saints who are with Jesus, we see, secondly, not only are they sealed with his name, secondly, they're singing. Verse 2, I heard the loud voice from heaven. The sound is like many waters. The sound is like harpists playing on harps. I don't know how many of you have heard a harp live before. David and Anna and Kristen and I back last week when we were in California actually had a chance because the host couple we stayed with, she's been learning to play the harp. And so she played a song or two. And there's kind of a bit of an ethereal quality about harps, the sound they make. Just, different instruments have different timbres to them, different native sounds to them. But harps have this kind of ethereal, cloud-ish quality in a sense that's peaceful and calming and soothing. It's beautiful, right? So it's like the sound of many waters in its volume, in its mass, and yet in its beauty, it's like harp playing and calling to you to be at peace and to rejoice and all of this. And they're singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. No one can learn that song except the 144,000 who've been redeemed from the earth. So it's this song of rejoicing, this song of victory, this song of redemption, and it's new because it's to those who have been redeemed. There are songs we sing that make no sense to those who have not been redeemed by Jesus. We say it and we're saying, Alleluia, for the Lord God Almighty reigns. And the people down the street, they're singing, YMCA, or We Will Rock You, or whatever, right? As they're going to a sporting event. These are very, very different songs. And if you haven't been redeemed, our songs make no sense. Justin just led us through 2 songs. We'll do a couple more later. And those songs make no sense if you haven't been redeemed. So whether right now or in eternity, the song is new, and the song is only truly learned by those who are redeemed. But those who are redeemed do sing it because we have reason to, because we have hope that actually flourishes in singing. There are songs of victory throughout biblical history that we see. Think of the song of Moses after they're led through the Red Sea, or there's a song of Deborah after she's brought about some victory. There's various songs all throughout. There's the whole entire book of Psalms, which some are victory, some are lament, etc. But victory songs coming out of battles. The Song of Moses, it's literally, we just got through the Red Sea. The Red Sea crashed down on all the Egyptians who we thought were about to murder us. And now we're singing to God who's rescued us. Right? That's the context of that. And in New Testament times, in Greek and Roman areas, it was very common for when the victorious generals would come back, for the people to run out and greet them and bring them into the city, returning with rejoicing and song. This doesn't yet show us the Lamb returning to earth. We get to see that later. But it's the same concept of all of his people around singing a song of praise to the Lamb. So his people are sealed with his name. His people are singing a song or singing songs. His people, verse 4, are virgins. So they've not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. Does this mean that everyone who's Jesus' people has never had sex? That clearly cannot be the case. Otherwise, there would only be one generation ever, and there would not be 144,000 of them. So it's relatively easy to see this is symbolic. But if we look throughout scriptural history, we can see it even more clearly because the imagery of virgin has been used throughout all the Bible, basically, to demonstrate faithfulness to God, to demonstrate turning away to idols, which would be idolatry, which would be playing the harlot, versus faithfulness to God, which would be seen as faithfulness and virginity. That's the picture that's presented. If you look at, for example, in Hosea, the first couple chapters is one of the most concrete examples where God actually calls Hosea to act it out. It's like, Hosea, you're going to go marry a wife, and I'm telling you ahead of time, she's going to be unfaithful to you. And Hosea, you're going to take her back again, and she'll be unfaithful again. And you're going to take her back again, and she'll be unfaithful again, because this is going to demonstrate my, God's unfailing love to my people. So Hosea's wife, Gomer, her unfaithfulness was intentionally meant to show the unfaithfulness of God's people. And Hosea's willingness to bring her back again and again is showing God's going to bring you back over and over and over again, because it's him and his grace that's saving you, not your own perfection. So when it says here, they're not defiled with women for they are virgins. Okay, does this mean they never sinned? Nope. And this is the crazy thing, because we know we've all sinned. And we know we've all sinned in various ways. We know we've all sinned in ways we regret, ways that are more mild, ways that are more heinous. None of us in this room can say, yeah, I deserve to be called a spiritual virgin, one who has always been faithful to God. Nobody. Nobody throughout all of biblical history, no one throughout all of modern history can look and say, yeah, that's me, I'm good. Do you see the beauty of this? Like, you're in a terrible spot as a sinner. And yet when we look at you standing on Zion with the Lamb, you are not just someone who was a sinner and redeemed. You're a virgin, purified by Jesus' blood, washed clean by all that he's done. Not washed clean by yourself, not washed clean because you finally got it right, not washed clean because you tried hard enough and eventually you made it, because the final 2 years you managed not to sin and so they could, stamp you. No, like, he washed you. He washes his people and gives clean robes that don't, like, they're a total contrast to what we actually are. We're like, I can't make it through a week or a day without sinning again. And yet the image that we're given is virgin, is clean, is undefiled. So his people with him are virgins. And then the next statement, they are those who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. We've had an unfortunate history since New Testament times of like majoring on certain things and setting aside others. And then there's a reactive case of majoring on other things and setting aside the other things. And I've said before to some people, I feel like we have, for the past 500 years, post-Reformation PTSD. From the Reformation, we declared, and very rightly so, it's not by works that you're saved. But what that also means is now we're like, anytime someone mentions good works, we're like, no, I don't want to do good works. Of course you do. Ephesians 2 says you're redeemed for good works, which he prepared ahead of time for you to do. Don't tell me good works. No, don't tell me blameless. Don't tell me that. We're like scared lest we ever should say what the Bible actually says, that we're called to faithfulness and good works and discipleship. And so it leaves us sometimes claiming that Christianity is only about believing facts about Jesus, but we're called to discipleship and following Jesus. And that's not a bad thing. It's still Jesus who saves. It's still not something we're earning. It's still, all of that's true. But let us not be those who run so far away from earning and merit that we just don't even care about good works and are actually scared of them. We see here those who are following the Lamb wherever he goes. As Jesus said at the end of Matthew, make disciples, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. So we get the beautiful privilege of going, where's Jesus going? I'm going there too. What's Jesus doing? I'm doing that too. I'm following. I'm a follower. I'm not a leader. Like, even if I'm a leader in human terms, I'm not a leader ultimately. Even the most charismatic person on this earth who 45,000 people want to follow as soon as he says hi or as soon as she says hi is not ultimately the leader. Ultimately, Jesus is the leader, and we follow Jesus and we follow his ways. And whether that's school decisions or politics or how you handle your money, whether it's Dave Ramsey or whoever leads your local homeschool co-op, or whether it's whoever teaches you what you should think about politics or work, whether it's the greatest CEO or the worst CEO, any of them. None of them are higher than Jesus as the leader of your life, as a believer in Jesus, as a follower of Jesus. Jesus' people are sealed by him. They're singing a song. They're virgins who are washed clean despite their sin. They are those who are following the Lamb as disciples. And these have been redeemed from mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb at the end of verse 4. These people are first fruits. First fruits, it's of the initial gleanings of the harvest. There's two concepts that build into this. One of them, when we see actually the Cain and Abel story, early in Genesis, Cain and Abel, the first sons of Adam and Eve, and Cain killed Abel. Why did he kill Abel? The immediate circumstance was they brought their sacrifice to God, and Abel brought from his first fruits, from the best of what he had. And Cain apparently didn't. And God accepted Abel's offering and not Cain's. So why did Cain kill him? Well, jealousy, sure, pride, et cetera, et cetera. But the circumstance was around this first fruits. Are you going to bring of your best to God or not? Secondly, first fruits are essentially kind of a down payment of the rest of the harvest, right? Like when you first, actually we have some accidental volunteer pumpkins at our house, which is kind of fun. I don't know, some pumpkin seeds got thrown out in the dirt and they're like, hey, let's grow. And then I went by and weed whacked it, not knowing what it was. And the girls were like, oh, you got the pumpkin plant. And it's still growing. So now we have pumpkins, even though I weed whacked them. And even though like there's vicious circumstances to grow up in, they're still growing. So we're looking at this yesterday, and I hadn't seen them yet, and Chris and the girls are pointing them out to me. There's these little pumpkins growing. One of them is actually kind of sizable and whatever. These are the first fruits of whatever pumpkin harvest is going to exist at our house. Because there's going to potentially be more. When you first plant a tomato and you see that first little green one and you're like, oh, cool. Someone's like, can I eat it? No, it's gross, whatever. But that's the first fruits of a greater harvest that's still to come. Rather, there's more tomatoes coming. These who follow the Lamb have been redeemed from mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb. These are certainly a down payment concept. And in some sense, I think also saying like these are the ones who have been sanctified and set apart in Jesus as the choice people from this harvest. But again, nothing any of us can deserve. We're gonna look at ourselves and say, yeah, I'm choice. I'm choice prime product. Yeah, that's why God, chose me, is because I was just so good. I mean, I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, man, you're nailing it. If you think that, you are deluded. We all sin in various ways. We all fail in various ways. And what he says is, I've made you clean. And now you're first fruits. Now you get to be the ones that were rejoicing and saying, hey, look, it's small, but there's more coming too, and it's going to be more ripe, and it'll be great. First fruits for God and the Lamb. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. Blameless saints. And again, I think it's worth reinforcing what I was saying a couple minutes ago, because sometimes we read stuff like this and the first reaction anyone says is, well, we're not really blameless. And that's true. But part of what we see throughout the Bible also is when God uses the terms blameless, like Noah was blameless in his generation, that is said with no qualification in Genesis 6. He was following God and was blameless in his generation. Does that mean he was literally perfect? Well, it doesn't. What it does mean is that when the Bible talks about people being righteous, faithful, blameless, etc., it's talking about the trajectory of your life. It's talking about, are you following God and following his ways or not? And the preeminent call God gives to you as a God follower is believe in and follow Jesus. So you can't be blameless, righteous, etc. without following Jesus, because that's the primary call to you if you're going to follow God. Just like the people in the Old Testament, if they're going to be blameless, righteous, etc., the primary call was do God's ways, which includes sacrifices and whatever as part of being actively right with God throughout the course of your life. So it is true, yet again, that the term blameless is ultimately most fulfilled because Jesus makes us blameless in a overall sense. But I think we need to remind ourselves that some of this is also a call to ongoing faithfulness in life. You don't have to be legally 100% blameless in your morality before God to be someone who is nonetheless faithful and righteous in biblical terms, seeking to follow Jesus actively day by day as a saint. Does that make sense? Like nowhere in the Bible does it say you must be perfect or else you can't be any kind of disciple at all. The closest we get is like when God says, be perfect because I am perfect, like as the goal that we're generally following toward. But he doesn't follow that up with saying, if you're not perfect, I'm going to cut your arm off, or like there's nothing there. So as we look to the fulfillment of our blamelessness, as we look to the fulfillment of our righteousness, the fulfillment of our faithfulness, and this is even like in Psalm 26 this morning, you notice he's like, God, would you stand for me because I'm holding to my integrity and I'm being faithful. I could read and be like, you arrogant jerk. Like, you're not faithful, you're not blameless. But David's not saying in that psalm, I'm perfect, God. Like, he knows he's not. He's talked through other psalms about how he's not. But what he's saying is, I'm seeking to follow you faithfully, and I'm striving for you, and I'm following you, Jesus. So in their mouth no lie was found, for they're blameless. They're virgins who don't deserve it. They're called blameless in a full way that we see fulfilled ultimately in eternity in glorification. Today we struggle with sin. Today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives, we're in the process of sanctification, being made more and more like Jesus. And ultimately what we see is that that process is completed and fulfilled with a true and ultimate blamelessness. Colossians 3, 1 through 4, I think is particularly interesting as a commentary on this picture, even though Paul's not talking about this particular revelation scene. If then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, the Lamb on Zion, then you also will appear with him in glory. You have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. In a very real sense, we can say that as a believer in Jesus, the real you isn't here. The real you is hidden and covered and protected with Jesus and God. And when he's revealed, there you are. The real you is finally fully fulfilled and manifest. And so what we're striving to do now is striving to become who we already are in Jesus. And yeah, it's a real striving because sin's still here, because we're still dealing with the curse, because we're still dealing with broken bodies and broken relationships and broken everything, right? It's a real struggle. And yet, the real you is hidden with Christ in God. The real you is protected and sealed and kept and blameless and virgin because Jesus has saved you and because he's perfecting you. This calling you're on is not to prove year over year that you feel like you've done well enough to demonstrate progress to God like a divine report card or progress report. You're going to sit, well, do your own self-analysis first, and then we'll have a meeting in 3 weeks, and I'll give you my analysis. You're like, okay, this 5-point scale, 5 says excellent, definitely above and beyond. I don't want to claim I'm above and beyond on everything. I guess I'll go with a 4. This other one says always does well with time entry. I mean, maybe a 3. This one says I work well with coworkers. I guess that's a 5 maybe, but he might not say it's a 5. And then 3 weeks later, we're getting the progress report and you're sitting with your boss or your teacher or whoever, and they're like, well, I agree with that one and not that one. On this, you're actually a 2 and you thought you were a 5. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. That's not what God's doing. He says, yeah, you're imperfect, and I've sent my spirit to help you and keep growing you and helping you to serve faithfully. And when you get to the end, you're glorified, and you got a 100% report card, not because you got there. And when you get to 2026, if your report card and your mind looks any better, it's because the Spirit's been active in your life. And you don't have to prove it to God or to yourself or to anybody. Because he's making you blameless and righteous and fulfilling that goal, you get to live freely in his smile, in his seal, with his name on your forehead. In the midst of a world where the dragon is here and the beasts arise, and the call is for us to sell out to the world all the time, to brand ourselves more as a Republican or Democrat than a Christian, to brand ourselves more as a homeschooler or public schooler than a Christian, to brand ourselves more as a Facebook user or Instagram user than a Christian. That's the generational divide for those of you who are older. Instagram's this younger tool that the young crowd uses. And then now there's TikTok, which the even younger crowd uses. So many things that we could brand ourselves by. So many things that we get a lot more agitated by than by the glory of Jesus. So many things we're a lot more willing to sing and cheer for than the glory of Jesus. Our world is constantly trying to distract us. And Satan loves to distract us with things of the world because we don't even realize it's spiritual battle. I'm just buying stuff. I'm just dealing with politics. I'm just dealing with school. I'm just dealing with health. I'm just dealing with life things. You're distracted. You're distracted from a hope in the Lamb who only gives eternal life. Satan loves that. And God, for our motivation to show us the beautiful call, shows us his people on Mount Zion with the Lamb. This picture of where will we ultimately be? We'll be on Mount Zion, protected from all the mess that's going on below, with the beasts and the dragon wreaking havoc here and there, calling for different identities, and we're saying, no, I'm with the Lamb. I'm good. The people that are having fun and all they need is the deodorant, right? No. We're the people that are rejoicing and singing a new song that no one else can learn because of Jesus. This is your picture for endurance. The Lamb sustains his people. And then the gospel both condemns and saves. The rest of the chapter here, the rest of the section, verse 6 through 13. We have 4 different commentaries that are provided here and one calling from John, essentially. 3 angels, commentary from John, and a voice from heaven. The first angel proclaims a gospel for the entire earth. To those who dwell on the earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people. So the gospel. We often discuss the gospel and we say gospel means good news. Gospel is a message about Jesus that he saves you. That's true. More broadly speaking, the gospel is the message that Jesus is the Messiah King who reigns over all things, which has implications for his people who are delivered from sin and death to eternal life. Also has implications for those who are not his people, who turn away from him, who set themselves as enemies of his, who instead will have sin and death. And we see that carried out here because the gospel that Jesus is king is only good for his people. Amen. It's only good news if you're with Jesus. If you're against Jesus, like the Roman emperors were, that's not good news that Jesus is king. If you're Herod, like, we got to kill this baby, I don't want my throne stolen. When Jesus was first born, it wasn't good news to him to hear that there was a threat to his powerful rule. If you look at American politics or politics around the world, pick whoever you want to. Politicians don't like having their power threatened. It's just a thing. It's like kind of a 100% thing, just about. We make odd decisions as politicians sometimes that are only about protecting power. We make other decisions other times that are about gaining power. Any politician around the world, it's not like, yeah, sure, I'll just give up my power. Because for one thing, their power is their job also, and like that's livelihood, and I get it, you don't want to lose your job. But more broadly, the gospel that Jesus is Messiah, that is ultimately a threat to all other rule. That is ultimately a threat to all those who would align as citizens of other kingdoms. So this gospel message to all people and tribes and language is not actually what we often would think we'd hear next, because he says with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory. Okay. We say that a lot, right? We get that first part. Okay. Because the hour of his judgment has come. What? That's not the gospel. He judges you? And worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water. But the gospel is that God saves, and the gospel is that God judges. And when Jesus came to earth in John 3:16, he said, God so loved the world, he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. Verse 17, God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. But that was at that time. 2 Corinthians 6 reminds us, now is the time of salvation, and there's a future day coming that will not be the time of salvation. Because God, yes, is a saving and merciful God who's patient in giving time that people be saved, and he's also the just judge of the entire universe. And the gospel is not just, he'll save you from everything. The gospel is the righteous king of all, who will enact justice on everything and everyone at one point, has nonetheless, by his great mercy, come down and made a way for you to be saved. The only reason it's good news is because there's really bad news before it. Like you're a sinner and you're stuck and you're going to be condemned apart from Jesus. The good news is Jesus rescues you. The good news is that as followers of Jesus, your king is now the Messiah over all things. So fear God and give him glory because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made heaven, earth, sea, and the springs of water. Vern Poythress, in a book regarding Revelation commentary, he pointed out that the heaven, the earth, the sea, salt water, and the springs of water, fresh water, essentially encompass the entire earth, all the different parts of the earth, right? And when we look previously at the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets, all 4 of those parts of the earth have been judged in various ways or been affected in various ways. So here when we see this summary statement, his judgment has come, who made these various things, we're reminded, or potentially reminded, of the judgments from the past. And as we talked about before, we're essentially going through cycles, looking over and over again at the same time period in Revelation. So here, because we're not looking in depth at those judgments here, it's summarized. The hour of his judgment has come. Second angel, second commentary on these things. Condemnation for Babylon. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality. Who's Babylon? At this time, when John wrote in the New Testament times, Babylon didn't exist. At this time, Babylon had been wiped out for hundreds of years. Babylon in the Bible, we see in the book of Daniel and prior to Daniel and some of the late chapters of Kings and Chronicles separately. Babylon was the country that came and overtook the people of Judah into exile. But Babylon was overcome by the Medes and Persians, and the Medes and Persians were overcome by someone else, and then eventually the Greeks and the Romans. So, why are we talking about Babylon? The simple fact of the matter is that throughout biblical prophecy and throughout the Bible as a whole, Babylon has come to symbolize and represent the world order as a whole that continually pushes against God, ultimately. Babylon, in this immediate time when John's writing, was almost certainly an intentional code word for Rome in the immediate context. And yet also, we see throughout biblical prophecy as a reference to the enemies of God at large. There's a couple other former enemies of God peoples that are also referenced sometimes, but Babylon is the predominant one. So who is Babylon? And this is the part where Revelation just smacks us around sometimes if we're too tied to this world. Because we're going to see this more, but ultimately, every human kingdom is Babylon. Ultimately, there's the kingdom of Jesus, and then there's Babylon. And at our best times as a nation and at our worst times as a nation, we are ultimately Babylon. We are ultimately proclaiming a message of tie down to this world, of greed, of materialism, of oppression, of whatever it might be. Again, pick your best times or worst times. There's different messages that are leading. Moral messages, immoral messages, distracting messages, undistracting, any number of things. But ultimately, every human society tends to Babylon, becomes Babylon. Because we're not led by righteousness and Jesus. We're led in the midst of a society where the dragon is roaming and attacking, and where the beasts are showing allegiance to this world matters more than allegiance to Jesus in the world economy. So we must be careful lest we find ourselves internally thinking, yeah, Babylon's someone else, not my nation. This applies every bit to us in the U.S. with our legacy of Judeo-Christian values. Applies every bit to us as it does to anyone else. And we only have to read our own history books to see travesties that have happened in our own nation. Right? Look back over our past couple hundred years. We've also had a lot of great stuff. But sin still exists here. Terrible effects still exist here, even with Judeo-Christian values. But fallen is Babylon, and this is an early declaration. We'll see more in chapter 17 in particular, 17, 18. The perspective, the lens, the scene will change and show a more zoomed-in version of Babylon's fall, of the world's fall as the Lamb takes over, as the Lamb says, no, this is now a world that will be renewed and remade. But for now, what we get is this preview, this foreshadowing of what we're going to read more of later in the book. Third angel comes with his commentary, and he says, if anyone worships the beast, verse 9, and its image, and receives a mark on his forehead or his hand, he also will drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, these worshipers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name. verse 8, fallen is Babylon the Great. What did Babylon do? Babylon made all nations drink the wine of the passion, that word, of her sexual immorality. Now again, sexual immorality, almost certainly here, not talking about just sexual immorality, but being symbolic for unfaithfulness to God. Just like virgins are symbolic of faithfulness to God, Babylon leading people in sexual immorality is leading people in unfaithfulness to God. But the wine of the passion is what the nations are drinking of. Those who would follow the beast, those who would be marked by the beast. So when this angel in verse 10 says, anyone who's followed the beast and gotten the mark and all this will also drink the wine of God's passion, wrath. So there's an intentional wordplay of sorts going on here in Greek because the verse 8, the wine of the passion of Babylon, is the exact same word as the wine of the wrath of God. This full emotion, fuming, active, whatever you want to call it, that we would label both passion or wrath. So you want to drink of the wine of the passion? You're also going to drink the wine of the wrath. It's labeled the same way. Same word is on the label of the wine. And it has two effects. When you drink it, it's sweet, and it goes down really, really hard. Because passion equals wrath for those who want it. Even just in those phrases, there's this tragedy that those who would drink of the passion are going to drink of the wrath. Those who want to sell out to, I'm just going to, do this for a little while. I'm unfaithful to God's ways, but it's no big deal. No. You drink of the passion, you drink of the wrath. Be warned. There is an eternal gospel to all nations and all languages that the Messiah is king. In him, bliss, beauty, joy, sustaining grace, endurance. Aside from him, you get the passion. You get the wrath. It's all one wine bottle. Poured full strength into the cup of his anger. It's quite the contrast. On the one hand, it's like, yeah, we're partying. On the other hand, all of a sudden, here's the wrath, here's the condemnation, the punishment. So John's reflection then, as we get to verse 12, here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. This is almost identical in chapter 13 at the end of verse 10. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. So right in the middle of the two pictures of the beast and the beast prophet, basically, here's a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. And right after we get this beautiful picture of the Lamb and his people on Zion, that's followed by these angels declaring, here's the gospel, it's both good and bad. Babylon is fallen. Those who follow Babylon get wrath. Here is a call for the endurance of the saints. Those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. Why endurance? Because it's hard. Because I can read right here, those who want the passion get the wrath. I can read right here, those who follow with Babylon fall. And yet in 3 hours, I could still be struggling with the same sin as yesterday. In a day, I could have forgotten this entire message that's being declared right now through my own mouth. In 3 days, in a week, in 2 weeks, whatever, I could be doing totally different and otherwise. Because the constant call from the dragon and the beasts is, come on, be part of this. Take this other mark. Be part of us instead. Look at these cool signs. Look at these cool wonders. It's neon lights. It's flashy. It's great. It's chromy. Come, follow, be a part, do this instead, do this other thing. It doesn't say, hey, it's easy to follow Jesus, just do it. Anyone who doesn't do it doesn't understand life. What are you, weak? That's not what it says. There's no part of the Bible does it pretend like following Jesus faithfully is easy. That's good news. Because it means when you screw up, and you will, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a week, whatever, you're going to screw up again. And you're going to screw up in the same way that you screwed up for the past 20 years, that you feel terrible about, that you wish didn't ever happen. You'd be like, why do I still do this? Because you need endurance. Because it is a battle. Because sin is real, and the power of the devil is real, and the power of the sin within us and the power of the world around us is all real. And you're not going to make it on your own. You're going to make it because Jesus is there and the Spirit is with you. That's the power on which you continue to grow and get stronger. This calls for the endurance of the saints. It doesn't just call for you to become a saint and magically it's easy. No, it's not. Especially because sin, it's cool that the world is seeing this with our science. We've discovered in the past couple decades that when you form habits in life, it literally forms synapses in your brain that become like grooves of common activity that you do. And like it's just the thing you do. You're used to doing it. It reminds certain smells or scents or locations or whatever, sounds, songs, they remind you of things, and it just leads your brain toward, oh yeah, I should do this, I should do this, do this. I've heard people say like the synapses that wire together, fire together, right? Like your brain literally will form basically grooves that become very easy to do. Whether that's toward sin or righteousness, doesn't matter. Whether it's totally neutral. Like we've been, ever since we finished our sauna at our house, it's very common for us to go sauna late at night and read the Bible or read a book or whatever. That's becoming a habit, so now it's really common when I see the clock get to like 9:30, I'm like, oh, I need to go turn on the sauna. I know some of you are already asleep. Sorry, I stay up late. So, point being, when we get stuck in sin, sin forms grooves too. And when Romans 12 says, be changed by the renewing of your mind, it turns out, science has discovered, it's actually literal renewal. Because as you learn to turn away from sinful habits and you learn to stop going down that trail, brainly speaking, that trail starts to become overgrown in your brain. And then that trail is not so easy to follow anymore. And you start to follow other paths more consistently. There's literal renewal happening in your brain as you're turning to Jesus. But until that renewal happens, it's still really easy to be like, oh, I'm going down that trail now. And sometimes that's with sin. And so sometimes the endurance of the saints means, yeah, it's the same thing you feel ashamed about. It's the same thing you already know is wrong. It's the same thing you beat yourself up about at night or every day or whatever. It's the same thing you feel like if everyone else knew, they'd hate me. And so let us not be those who create a culture that encourages that kind of feeling. I'm broken, you're broken, we're all broken in different ways according to our proclivities and personalities and whatever, and according to where God has us. And yet the Spirit is strong for all of us. And yet the Spirit is the same one that all of us must rely on. And if you're struggling with something that I'm not, it's not because I'm so much better than you. It's because the Spirit's worked in my life in different ways, and I'm probably struggling with something that you're not. So we can be broken people redeemed by Jesus, headed toward blamelessness because of His grace. And that's a wonderful thing. So endurance is needed by the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. And then here's the hope at the end of all of it, the additional hope, that is. I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. These who die in the Lord, these who are seeking to follow His ways, these who are striving toward Jesus, striving to follow Jesus, being His disciples, following where He goes, failing from day to day, but trying our best, striving by the power of the Spirit. I'll see what I get, and I'm not perfect, and I get it wrong, and sometimes I weep about it, and sometimes I rejoice from where I am. And sometimes someone else is mad at me, and sometimes I'm mad at them, and sometimes it's all happy, and sometimes I'm struggling again and again, and sometimes I'm crying in the night, and sometimes it's awesome and I'm singing songs, and other times I'm singing songs and I feel like a hypocrite, and other times I'm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You guys may or may not realize sometimes you're preaching and feel like a hypocrite. You know that can happen? So don't feel so bad when you're singing a song and feel like a hypocrite. We're all seeking to worship God and live well to the best of our ability by the Spirit. But what he says is, your deeds follow you. This following after Jesus, this isn't meant as a condemnation. It says, blessed, you may rest from your labors. So you see this call from endurance in verse 12, and it's like, God, that's so hard sometimes. Trying to follow and struggling with sin, and I can't do it, and I need your help. And then I pray and it doesn't just immediately zap and I'm good and I don't get it and I'm still struggling and I don't understand this thing or that thing, and is it health or spiritual, and is it something else, and how do I figure it all out, and I'm struggling to hold on to Jesus. There's your endurance, right? And he says in verse 13, when you die, you get to rest from that labor because your following of Jesus follows you, and now you're with him. That's why it's blessed to die in the Lord. You get to rest. It's why when Hebrews talks about the rest that he calls us into, let us struggle to enter that rest. He's given us the peace to know that he is the one sustaining us. And even now we can be at rest as we struggle because we know he helps us in the struggle and he puts his stamp of approval on the struggle. I see you struggling. By my Spirit, I'm helping you struggling. And I love that you're struggling to follow me. You're not just giving up and throwing in the towel. And sometimes we see ourselves sinning and failing again and I have no faith. No, your faith is holding on tight right now. Sometimes in the hardest times of our life, we get all down because we feel like I got nothing. Yeah, you got nothing, except the nothing you have is clinging to Jesus pretty hard, and I can see it. And it's awesome. And the fire tests the gold, and the gold remains. But it is a fire that tests the gold. But do you see that? Like, here's a call for endurance, and you get to rest when you die. It's a struggle. That's okay. It's a struggle for 100% of us. And Jesus makes it good. And Jesus gives you strength to endure. What is your situation? You all have different ones. I know some of them. I don't know others. Some of us have had really difficult health situations for ourselves. Some of us have had difficult health situations for people in our family. Some of us have had people die or almost die. Some of us have had hard times at work or at school. Some of us have temptations we deal with every day. All of us have temptations we deal with every day. Some of us struggle with parenting. Some of us think we're doing well with parenting. Most of us, unfortunately, think that everyone else in here is doing awesome and compare ourselves to the awesome that we think other people are doing and beat ourselves up. So I'm going to tell you now, the people that you think are doing awesome are not doing awesome. None of us is a plastic perfect being. But what's your struggle? Do you realize in the midst of that struggle, your call is for endurance? An endurance that Jesus loves and sustains and shows you your vision in the cosmic commercial, standing on Mount Zion with the Lamb, singing a song that no one else can even learn because you're one of the redeemed. Songs that make no sense to the world around because you're saved, because you have hope that lasts beyond the grave, because you have hope that lasts beyond your own sin and struggles. You have hope that scatters shame and sends it away. Because the power of shame is you wallowing in your sin and thinking you're not enough. And Jesus says, too bad, because I can save him anyway. Therefore, endure and sing for Christ the King. Those two things, I think this passage shows overwhelmingly. This is a call for the endurance of the saints, and what are the saints doing? They're singing. So endure and sing for Christ the King. And let all these things motivate you to sing more. When you're here, sing loud and sing fun. Sing off key. Who cares? Jesus saved you, and he's still saving you, and he's bringing you to blamelessness. That's beautiful. It's more worthy of praise than any touchdown. It's more worthy of rejoicing than any 6-figure income increase. You become the CEO, and now you're multi-million-dollar. You know what? Jesus saved you, and that's better. So if you think, I don't want to sing, I'm not a good singer, I don't care. Let's do it. Let's sing because he's worthy. If you think I can't endure because it's so hard, the Spirit's there. And Jesus is here looking at you, not with a frown on his face, not saying, you messed up again, you dummy. Saying, I know the struggle you face. I came as a human. That's what Hebrews talks about all throughout Hebrews 3 and 4, or 2, 3, 4. Jesus came to endure the same kind of struggles we endure, that he could be made faithful as a high priest, as an intercessor for us. When Jesus was in the desert facing temptation from Satan, Jesus was facing real struggle and real temptation. He would never have actually sinned, but you got to realize he was actually hungry. He was actually, when you talk about being hangry, Jesus was more hangry than you ever would be. He didn't eat for 40 days and 40 nights. He faced the real temptations. He says, I'm here for you. I know this struggle. The Spirit is with you. Press on, saint. You're almost home. Keep going. You're almost there. And don't let your struggles define you. So often, we let our struggles define us. And we beat ourselves up and we wonder why we feel bad. Well, you're punching yourself in the face every day. Of course you feel bad. And when it's not your face, it's your gut. Like, you're constantly your own enemy. Jesus isn't your enemy. Like, you're hurting yourself more than Jesus would, and he's the one who's actually the righteous judge. Endure and sing for Christ the King. Press on, believers, in faithfulness, in discipleship after Jesus, because you are loved, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. And when he comes, you too can be revealed on that mountain with the Lamb, singing a new song. And if anyone here isn't actually a disciple of Jesus, you can join in right now. It's a party and it's great, and we get to sing new songs that you don't right now understand. Jesus says to all who would come, his arms are wide open. So let's do that. Let's endure. Let's press on in faithfulness, and let's sing loud the joys of our Savior, the joys of the promise that he gives for now and for eternity.